Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of our Open Innovation Thursdays. My name is Marisol Menendez. I'm CEO of Vilacatcho, a company dedicated to open innovation and ecosystem orchestration with many different ecosystems. I'm connecting from Spain today, nearby the Mediterranean Sea. And as every Thursday, I have the opportunity to discuss with each of the authors of the Oxford Handbook of Open Innovation. We are discussing their chapter and learning more about the takeaways and learnings about the chapters of the book. I feel very lucky to have the opportunity to do that. I feel very lucky of having the opportunity to talk today with Jim Zemlin. Jim, welcome to you today. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jim. We always like to begin by getting a little bit more about the people behind each of the chapters. So can I please ask you to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Jim Zemlin. I am the CEO of the Linux Foundation. The Linux Foundation is a nonprofit organization. This is now my, I think, 21st year working at the Linux Foundation. And our organization is home to really the largest shared open source software investment in the world. Um, we're not home to all open source projects, but we're home to most critical open source projects, the most famous of which is Linux, which runs 90% of the world's computing systems, whether it's an Android phone, internet server, self-driving car, all of it is on Linux. But we're also home to a wide variety of modern open source technologies, all of which are freely available for anyone to use and available for anyone to participate and contribute to. Some of the more interesting ones are PyTorch, which is used to create the large language models in AI that we're all using today. Another one is a project called Kubernetes, which runs all modern cloud services. So whether it's Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Tencent, Baidu, all cloud computing runs on the Kubernetes open source project. We even have projects in hardware. RISC-V is a good example. It's the fastest growing semiconductor instruction set in the world, and it's used to power silicon chips in small devices all the way up to internet servers. So we've got a lot of different technology that we work to bring people together and collaborate on, and it runs, most of the world's modern computing systems.
Wow, Jim, this is amazing. And of course, we are all fan of Linux and the Linux case, and in particular in the open innovation world. Next chapter, we are talking also with Hillary because she wrote the chapter and it's part of the open innovation family because we've been following the case very closely. And really, it's such a joy to have the opportunity to talk to you today. You wrote, you're the sole author of this chapter number 44 called Ubiquitous Software Innovation Building Block, Open Source. It's part of the section number 8, Open Innovation in Practice. It's the second chapter of the section, by the way, where we are discussing about real case and in practice cases about open innovation with many different practitioners who are living and experiencing what is open innovation about in the real case. So my very first question to you is, how come did your chapter ended up being in the book?
I think that when you talk about open innovation and you look back at discussions around the value of collective research and development, the value of academic cooperation, like kind of sort of going back decades to, whether it's the early days of the internet or examples of, collective research and development that happened. And um, for a very long period of time, a lot of advocates for open innovation would have to explain the concept of open innovation, would have to explain, in my case, the concept of open source software, collectively developed software. And a lot of it was theoretical. A lot of it was about convincing people that this was a better way to innovate. What I wanted to point out in 2024, 2025 is that we really no longer need to evangelize, at least in software, that open innovation techniques, that open collaboration is a better, faster, more innovative way to produce technology. What we really need to do is give people concrete examples, practitioner perspectives of how the actual process unfolds, how the building blocks of open innovation in software work. And so it's that practitioner's perspective that we wanted. And what I think is the greatest thing about open source as an example of open innovation, it really makes up today the vast majority of code in any modern technology product or service. There are rough estimates out there today that 80 to 90% of the source code in a mobile device, a enterprise server, anything is open source software. And so the industry no longer software developers no longer need to be convinced that open innovation is the way to go. They just want to know, how do I get involved and how do I participate in this incredible source of great technology?
I totally agree. And I think we are not as aware as we should be, being so um, present around our lives. I led an open innovation unit in a bank, and even like revealing to people in the bank that we were running on open software was very interesting. Well, so can you tell me what's your chapter about? What are the takeouts that you wanted um, to bring out from this chapter?
What I really wanted to communicate is a practical perspective for how open source software is created, and then give a couple of examples of how industry has really leveraged this collective development process that folks may not have thought about in what are not historically technology sectors per se. So I think that we all know the story of Linux. It really is the poster child of a lot of innovation, open innovation conversations. Linus Torvalds, who I work with, he works at the Linux Foundation, started working on Linux in 1991 and continues to maintain Linux literally to this day as we speak. He also took a little bit of time and created Git, which is the software behind GitHub, and is really the second most important open source software in the world. So he certainly has done well. But everyone sort of knows the story, right? Here was this David versus Goliath, the Goliath in this case being Microsoft and Unix companies like Sun, and sort of a long cycle and of innovation has essentially overtaken all rival platforms, and everyone loves telling us. But what a lot of people might not know, and I think this is important for industry practitioners, is okay, but what if I'm in the motion picture industry, or what if I'm working for a telecommunications company? Like, how can I unlock that same open innovation? Or maybe I'm a utility provider. How do I participate in this collective innovation? And that's really what I wanted to try and get across in this chapter, is specific examples of industry as it relates. source. And my favorite story to tell is about the film industry, because I think it's something everyone can relate to and doesn't necessarily think of as a technology industry, as an area, sector that really embraced open source very, very effectively.
Well, this is great. And really, we've been discussing in many different opportunities around the open innovation ecosystem about these cases. And as you say, we can relate closer to the filming industry. But of course, there are so many other cases that we could also build up to. We are getting close to the end of our discussion and conversation today. But I wanted to ask you if you can give any takeaway or advice or something to take with us, maybe thinking about that we have in our audience both practitioners and academics. So do you feel that there's the need to go into the academic areas or fields or any takeouts that can be applicable, but also for the practice world?
I think the biggest lesson I've learned in over 20 years of working in collective innovation and, really focusing on open source software is this form of innovation captures two incredibly important things. When we first started working with people in, Disney and Pixar and DreamWorks, or when we started working with the auto sector, people at Toyota and Panasonic and GM, the first thing the engineers told us was, oh my gosh, we get to talk to other people who don't work for our company and exchange ideas. This is the greatest thing ever. And this is the important part. In any endeavor, there's a couple of things that make that endeavor work well. One is just good expertise. In our case, we sort of use the term project market fit, solving a really hard problem. And so that's the act of creating the collective artifact. And then the second important component is the culture of the group. All companies, that just kind of are single companies, try to create the greatest culture they can, right? They want folks to be enthusiastic. They want them to believe in their cause. What open source has done is managed to do two things really well. One, open source developers are well compensated. They work for big companies and they're at the cutting edge of innovation. So there's an extrinsic motivation, good compensation, being a part of a big company, solving tough problems. But it's coupled with an intrinsic motivation of being a part of something bigger than just yourself or your company. Mastering your craft with some of the smartest people in the world. Recognition globally of your achievements as the software that you might have participated in, even in a small way, becomes a ubiquitous building block for society. It's that intrinsic motivation that we find when we talk to open source developers is the number one reason they participate. It's the money, working for their company. That's the secondary reason, but they still are motivated in both ways. All organizations on earth want this, a great culture and a technical excellence. And open source has really captured both those things. If your organization, and I give a couple of examples in the chapter, whether it's telecommunications or the film industry, wants to take advantage of both that incredible collective culture and really, really good software development methodologies, this is the way to do it.
This is really interesting also to dig into with the ecosystem theory. We always like to talk about ecosystems and interconnection and the value capturing process, very well coupled with the open innovation definition, talking about the knowledge flows across organizational boundaries, aligned to the value and the strategy of the organization. But at the end, I always like to think that ecosystems is about creating an infrastructure more valuable than many other infrastructures maybe that we have in our humanity, and this is a human infrastructure of connections that where we can build up. And I think that open software is an amazing worldwide infrastructure of people connected to create value, as you were saying, intrinsically and extrinsic value as well, but clearly with many different dynamics of open innovation and ecosystem. We are looking forward of hearing more and learning more and digging into each of the layers. And of course, I advise everyone to please take a look into the chapter because it's very, very interesting. And also follow up in chapter number 45 with Hillary Carter, where we keep talking about the Linux case. Jim, anything to add? Final thought before we go?
Yeah, I just, I'm happy to be a part of this world. I sort of, when people ask what I do for a living, sometimes it's a little bit hard to explain. I work at this nonprofit, and kind of the best way I've explained it recently is think of open source foundations as reverse venture capitalists, where we are looking for a great open source project that solves a big market need, project market fit. But instead of monetizing it and trying to capture all the value, we give away the software and create a much larger amount of value that many organizations can use to capture their own corresponding value in the market. And I think that has a much larger economic impact. And I'm backed up by that with studies like one recently from Harvard University, which estimated the value of open source software on the demand side at roughly 9 trillion US dollars. So it's something I'm very proud to be a part of, and I'm glad to be a part of this book.
That's certainly amazing and something to value, besides the money. Jim, it was such a delight to talk to you today. Thank you very much for sharing this time with us. And I invite everyone to keep looking and listening to our Open Innovation Thursdays. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.